In the last video, we got our page set up with the correct printer, the correct size of sheet, the correct plot style, and page orientation. Next, it's time to prepare the drawing that we have in model space to print so that it is scaled. Now, printing your drawings to scale is super beneficial to people who are out on the job site who may not have access to a computer because there might not even be electricity on the job site yet. A scaled drawing is a smaller version of the object that is going to be built, and it's also a measurable version. So using an architectural ruler, we can measure just about anything that is sized to fit on a piece of paper so that we can build it in the real world sizes. So for instance, if something is scaled to 1/4 inch equals 1 foot, it simply means that for every 1/4 inch that you measure on the paper, that 1/4 inch should be measured as 1 foot out in the real world. Alright, so once your page setup is complete and you have the correct size pretend piece of paper and with the right printing boundaries, you have a title block set up, the next thing to do is position your drawings within the title block. This square that you see right here, it's called a viewport. A viewport is basically a wormhole into model space, or if you want to look at it this way, the border you see is merely a picture frame. So your picture, or what you see inside the frame, is model space. Now you can size your frame any size you want to by simply clicking on it and moving the grips around. La 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 la. So pretty. You can also size the picture inside the frame, and we do that through what's called scaling. So scaling is basically zooming in or out on the picture that we create, but in a way that can be measurable. So if you double click inside, you can use your pan hand, you can use your center wheel to zoom in and out, and that's all we're doing, zooming in and out. I'm going to double click outside to unactivate the picture so that then I can just work with the frame. See how that works? Now, if you don't have a viewport in your layout, you can add one. So simply type viewport, enter, and this window pops up, and you can decide what kind of viewport you want. I almost always choose single and click OK. And then your cursor prompts you to draw a rectangle, just like the rectangle command that we learned earlier. And once you click that second click, it becomes a viewport and you can see everything that you have drawn thus far. Alright, I'm just going to get rid of that one because I don't need it because I already have one, but I do want to point out that some sheets in your construction document set are going to have multiple drawings, and some of those drawings get their own viewport because the drawings might be scaled differently from one another. So know that it's okay to have multiple viewports on a single sheet. It's just that for some of these smaller sheets, like what we're doing with 8x11 and 11x17, you probably only need one. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So I just want to double click inside the viewport one more time. This is called activating the viewport. The border gets bold when the picture or model space is activated, and double click outside of the frame in order to adjust the frame itself. Okay, so again, I just wanted to show you because that's super important for understanding the behavior of the viewports. Whenever you see the grip, you know that you are working on the frame aspect. When you don't see them but you do see that the border is extra bold, that's how you know that you're working inside of the picture or model space. Now this frame will have its own layer, and that layer is called def points. Def points is a layer that you see on the screen, but it never ever prints. So my template already has def points. If I come to layer properties and we scroll all the way down past the A's, here is def points. Now if you're not using the template, you do not have this layer, so simply create a new layer and name it def points. It can be all small letters, or you can put a capital D. I think it remembers either way. Don't forget the S on the end of it though. So AutoCAD actually knows the name of this layer. So again, you can come here and create a new layer and then name it def points. I'm just going to exit out because I already have def points. So like I said, AutoCAD already knows the name of this layer, and once you name it, it's going to update the layer with all the parameters, including the ability to be seen and not printed, which is what this little printing icon is right here. So if you look closely, like a wall, it looks really bright, but on depth points, it's kind of grayed out. That's how you know that layer is not going to print. I always choose a color for depth points that is not in the AutoCAD color bar. So when I double click on the color and it brings this up, this is the AutoCAD colors. This is what your plot style will read. Your plot style will not understand any of these colors. But because depth points is not a printable layer, I don't care. I want a color that I can recognize separately from these. So I always pick orange or I pick purple, whichever one that you want to work with. I just tend to go with orange more than anything. So once you have your color picked, click OK, and here you are. Alright, I'm going to cancel out of this and come back here. So again, if I click on that, you can look up here. It is assigned to the depth points layer. If it's not assigned to the depth points layer, simply click on the scroll bar, find it, select it, and it will assign just like that. There's depth points. So once you have your frame size set on your paper space, like within this title block drawing area, and since we don't really know what it's going to be doing, I'm just going to drag it out something like this. Then it's time to start scaling the picture inside the frame. So you start scaling by either activating the model space by double clicking inside, or you simply click once on the frame itself so that you see the grips. Either way works, but once it's selected or activated, you should see that there's a new option down here. Things kind of changed down here a little bit, and you'll see a scroll bar that has something that looks like a decimal number. And when you click on that, you'll start to see that there's all kinds of scales that you can work with. Now these ratio scales, where it's like 1 to 8, 1 to 10, all of those are more of an engineering scale, and those are for super scaled buildings or things like that. But we're architectural, and so we deal with these types of scales down here. So let's set our ceiling fan to 3/4 inch equals 1 foot scale. And what it'll do is it'll bring it up. Now sometimes it'll happen that you can't see your drawing in here. It's okay, just double click, and you can always use the zoom extents to find it, or just kind of use your pan hand to kind of drag it around. But I always try to center within a viewport as best I can. Now if you want to get rid of that stupid grid that you see down here at the very bottom right next to where it says model, it's the grip mode. Just click on that to turn the blue off and you'll see that your grid goes away. Now if for some reason when you activate a viewport and you don't see this navigation bar, it happens from time to time, just type nav's wheel and hit enter. Even if it doesn't show up, click out and then click back in, and then you should see the navigation bar all over again. Once you have the object scaled to fit inside the title block, I suggest that you lock your viewport. I also suggest that you make the viewport kind of snug around the drawing. We don't need to have these big giant viewports taking up everything. I always try to keep things concerning whatever drawing that I am scaling around that drawing. So to lock your viewport so that you don't accidentally like bump it and then maybe oops, as soon as you change the zoom of your viewport, it's no longer scaled, and you can tell by coming over here and looking and see, oh yep, it's not on 3/4 anymore. Let's get it back on 3/4. Let's get this centered. Here we go. Alright, just click this little lock down here and it will lock it. Turn it blue, and now you can't accidentally zoom in or out. You're just zooming the actual page. So that's always a good little trick that I have, is as soon as I get it figured out and I get it scaled and I get it positioned, I just grab the viewport and then I hit the lock button. Of course, to unlock it, make the lock unblue, and there you go. Is unblue a word? I don't know. I kind of like it. Unblue. Alright, so once you have your image in your viewport and it's locked and set, come down here to the drawing title and fill out the information. So you can double click on it and you will see that it has a little window, and you can click on each one of these to decide what to give it. So always name it for what it is. So this is a ceiling fan. Some people are okay with it not being all caps, and some people want it to be all caps. So just kind of check with your project manager or your instructor to see what they want. I'm cool with it not being in all caps. So ceiling fan, and then I'm going to do a dash plan view. It's always good to kind of indicate what view. Is this an elevation? Is this a section? Is this a plan? What is this? Now the view number is the drawing number on the title block. So like I said, some title blocks are going to have multiple drawings. So you'll have drawing 1, you'll have drawing 2, you'll have drawing 3. As this is the only drawing on this sheet, it's just going to stay at 1. And then of course I need to update the scale because it's not 1-to-1 ratio. It is 3/4 inch. Make sure you put the quotations, space, equal sign, space, 1 apostrophe dash 0 inches. So make sure that your scales always read this way. Do not leave off the dash 0 inches. Do not put 3/4 inch equals 1. Don't forget quotations. They should always look exactly this way. This is tradition. This is what is expected on CD sets. So it's up to you to learn the traditions. Now, some of you might not have this drawing title, which is what that is essentially called. If you want to find it, go up to the View tab in your ribbon, go to the Tool Palettes, find the Annotation tab, which is usually the third one down, and it is Drawing Title Imperial. Now, if you're working outside of the States and you use the metric system, you might want to go all the way down and find Drawing Title Metric. But here in the good old US of A, we use Imperial. So Drawing Title Imperial, click on it, and you'll see that you can bring it down and it creates a new drawing title for you. It is good for a drawing title to be located close to the object, but not too close, if that makes sense. You need some breathing room, okay? Don't crowd it out. This isn't a protest, people. This is social distancing done right. Not too far, not too close. The other thing that's good is to make sure that your line, so your circle should just be just to the left of the object, and the end of this line should be just to the right of the object. So it should overlap just a little from the far edge, but not too far. It's kind of a balance thing, and sometimes it takes a couple times of doing it to understand. So we got social distancing practices right here, and we also have a little overlap and a little overlap. It's close, but not too close. Don't want it to be way down here. It's super important that these drawing titles are associated with the object itself. I gotta bring this back over a little bit because it was kind of not overlapping. Alright, so anytime that you have a plan view, you should also have a north arrow. So I actually drew this north arrow and then I blocked it. So you can't really find a good north arrow on AutoCAD. If you saw the north arrow that AutoCAD has, you'd be like, what in the heck is that? It's huge and it's weird looking. And so this is a typical north arrow. It's just some text. It's got a circle, and I drew some lines and I filled it in with hatching, which you haven't learned quite yet. But I just suggest you make your own. Anytime you have a plan view of anything, you should always have a north arrow indicating exactly which direction north is. And that north arrow should be somewhat assimilated here. So I just used the move command and I moved it up. Something like that is what you're looking for. I do kind of want this to be a little bit more centered, so I'm going to grab the move command and I'm going to move it over just slightly. There we go. Of course, you want to update all your title information that you have right here. What's the due date? What's the sheet name? Your project information, all that kind of stuff. But this is basically what you're going for. And once you're here, do a print preview or a plot preview, and you'll see that we now have everything is in black and white. You can also really tell The line weights, right? Because this is a red line and bam, that is dark and bold. And the rest of this is not quite as dark and bold. And then once you're done with that, I'm going to go up here to the big red A. I'm going to hit print. And sometimes this pops up. A batch plot is when you have multiple layouts and you want to plot them all out at once. I just want to do this one layout and print that, so I'm going to continue to plot a single sheet. You'll see this pop up, and once again, this is what your page setup looked like. So if you did everything correctly, just double check. Drawing to PDF, ANSI full bleed A, it's landscape, it's DDFD full. I can always do a quick check of preview one more time. It looks good, so I'm going to hit X out of here, and then I'm going to hit OK. The next thing it's going to do is like, okay, where do you want to save this PDF, right? Because it's a digital print. It's not like a physical print. So that's where I can decide, like maybe I just want to put it on my desktop for now, and then I can name it according to my naming system. Here at the school I teach, that's something that we're really fond of doing. So I'm going to say P1 because this is just practice, and then my last name. There we go. Click Save. And it will save it, but then it will also give you a preview of what that PDF is going to look like. Then you take this PDF file, print, and then you find the printer, the physical printer in a room that you want to print to an actual piece of paper. Now the thing you got to watch out for is that some of these printers like to shrink oversized pages. That means that if you print this when it shrinks, it's no longer a scaled drawing. So always make sure you have actual size checked. If you don't, you could be in trouble. That's really the only thing that you have to make sure is handled when you get to this part. And then you hit print, and I just printed to that printer. It's pretty simple to print. This is kind of a process, guys, and I'm sorry that it takes a little bit, but I promise once you've practiced and printed a lot, it's going to feel like riding a bike. You're just going to know how to do it over and over. It just feels super awkward at first. You've got a series of steps that you need to follow, so maybe it would be helpful to write down those series of steps so that you can hit them every time, and eventually you're not going to need that list anymore. You're just going to know how to do this, okay? Well, that's all there is to printing. We're on to the next video.